Welcome to Trophies on PSN's The PodStation. Howdy, Dante.
Hello. Greetings from stormy Britain.
Stormy Britain.
Yep, storming Norman. Storming Normans? Yeah, that sounds about right. We had Normans here, I think. Yeah. Sorry, I was just having to go through British history in my head then.
Way over my head. We don't learn much about British history. We threw some tea in some.
No, we
lake
threw
or
some
something
tea
like
in there, and then you got annoyed about it, and we taxed you, and you know.
Okay, whatever happened, something happened.
Yeah.
I don't know. We kicked some butt, something like that.
Well, you'd know if you'd played Assassin's Creed 3, but sadly, it's still not in your disc tray yet.
Oh, I have to learn my history from video games. That's a good idea.
Well, you can't say you don't learn something new from video games.
Well, I've had people tell me they've learned English, and I've had people tell me that they've learned to read better and everything, so I guess it...
Yeah, but when we talk about learning English from video games, we're not talking exactly good English here.
Yeah, you learned all the profanity first.
Yep, moving swiftly on.
Moving swiftly on. Alrighty, let's talk about the site. So, we have a tremendous system going with comments. Let's just say that our comments have improved. Our guide upload speeds are greatly improved. We've done a lot with the guide team to make their job easier. We've got a lot with, for the writer now, where they can actually copy and paste the guide code from a guide. They no longer have to put in all the BB code and spend hours doing that, and like copying and pasting image, links and the name and description of the trophy. It's all right there. Person can just pull it down and paste it right into vBulletin, into a post, and then just start going with the descriptions.
Seeing all the improvements with that, I'm seriously tempted to actually write a guide, because it looks just so easy.
You have no idea. Like, I saw it the other day, I'm thinking, damn, it'd be so easy to write a guide now.
Yeah.
Because that's more of the annoying work than anything, is just getting all that code going. So the whole idea is to make this, better for everyone. Guides are the important focus. Trophies are the focus. We all know that. And so hopefully this will be a big step. And then the other thing with the news, the comments, I think you've seen a little bit of that, those changes.
Yeah, we road tested it yesterday and this afternoon. Yeah. The system works perfectly with the ability to obviously thumb up, down other people's comments, but now you can actually direct comments at other people. You just use the @ symbol, and it posts it onto your virtual message board. Visitor message board. I always get confused with that. Your visitor message board, and yeah, we tested it out, a couple of us yesterday, and it works brilliant. I think that's a great way to notify people as well, because I mean, especially if you set up your profile to actually send you notifications when people leave visitor messages on your wall. That's a great way to keep up to date with what's going on with stories. So yeah, it gets a thumbs up for me, buddy, and it's good to see that it's working properly as well.
People need to know that the @ symbol, you can actually put in a person's name. You don't actually have to click on the @ and you can actually send it, even if you don't have a message you're responding to. But it does send it, gives them the link back to the article. It tells them what you said. When you're mentioned, to be notified like that, I think that's pretty awesome. And then, this will drive people to actually have conversations. And then if it's a one-on-one conversation, it's perfect for going to the visitor message where they can continue to talk between each other. And
it's important to also mention that over the coming days, we're actually going to be making some changes with the way that we actually do articles, in terms of, because at the moment we currently post them in the forum in the front page for the next few days, and just to see how it works, and possibly longer, we're actually going to be locking the forum articles and redirecting you to the front pages, because we want to see what the reaction is. We need to really stress test the front comment system. Plus, I mean, let's be honest, the hard work and everything and the new features of it are so cool. Why would you want to go in the forum and post on the news articles? Come to the front page, because I'm telling you, that's where it's all happening.
Yeah, here's the thing for me. I look at it from the standpoint of, we have a forum, and that's for discussing things and for big involved topics. The more I look at what an article's for, it's got a time limit on it. It's not something you want to have sit in a post. It's not something that, most of your comments are not going to be directed at another person using that @ because it's going to be, what do you think about the article? Not what do we think about what Dante said about that article, which is more what the forum is for. It's to involve everyone in having their opinion in just different discussion, whereas the article section is, that's news that's going to kind of come out. It's going to go stale. Then a couple of days, you're not really, you're on to the next one. And it should be, what you think about the article. Use those comment section to say, that's great. I can't wait for this game. Use it for, excellent article. I would like to know more about this. And as we said before with the thumbs up and thumbs down, use that to direct the writers, the news team, to what kind of stories you want to see. Because if you want to see more stories on the PS4, then, give those all thumbs up. If you want to see less on a certain game or something like that, feel free. Your opinion's your opinion, and that's an important part of engaging people, is to have them say what they think.
And we've all got thick skin, we won't take it personally. Yeah. Just going to say the other thing to bear in mind as well is that even if you're not a member of the site, you can leave comments on the front page articles as well. Yeah. And if somebody's undecided about signing up or joining a community, you as the community can encourage them by having a discussion on the front page articles with people that might not necessarily, maybe sat on the fence about signing up, and as a result of the conversations they have, they may be tempted to come and join the community, which obviously is better for everyone. So, do make the best of them. There's a lot of hard work that's gone into it, and yeah, we look forward to seeing that grow and grow more, because we're dead excited about it as a news team. So, hence we're always willing to take feedback and compromise and work towards other ideas as well. So, yep. This is first in, no doubt, a long process of changes that will eventually come, and we'll share more with you further down the road. But yeah, it's a good start, and I hope people make the best of it, really, because it's cool.
To move on, what's next? We are focusing on the front end, pulling the data. All that stuff is kind of a shoddy system. Honestly, we want to pull more stuff about games. Not just from Sony's API, but from everywhere out on the internet. We'd like to get ratings. We'd like to get release dates. We'd like to get all that stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that is being put in behind the scenes by staff. Thank you for that. Those staff members know, to mention their names. Zol, Rochambeau, Spratters. Putting that information in is a big chore. But we want to take this to another level. And so to let the cat out of the bag, Nate's next focus, our programmer Nate, will be putting in a lot of this functionality and stuff on the front end. He's going to start with ratings, where we'll be able to rate games by likability and difficulty, and that'll help with some of the threads that are up where people are trying to judge what some of the hardest games are right now and do polls.
Do you know what the worst thing about those threads are, though? They always seem to be buried in the far corners of places. Do you know what I mean, though? It's just like you have to really search for like difficulty threads and stuff like that. And it's not just us. I mean, obviously, there's other places that do it. So anything that makes that more visible, in my books,
we'll
a
put
good
right
move.
On the front page, on the front page. And then later down the road, we can tweak it to if somebody's played a game, is only where they can rate it. I mean, we won't start with that, but I mean that's if somebody's beat a certain percentage of a game, for example, then they can rate the difficulty of the trophies. But we'll start with that simple rating system, and hopefully everyone will do their best to pitch in and rate those and be honest about what they think about a game and not just give everything 1s or 10s or anything like that. And I've directed Nate to separate them by likability being stars, difficulty being a point system, a 1.0 up to 10.0. That way there's this easy, clear separation between is it that I like this game or is it difficult, and people don't get confused.
Yeah, well, I've played some dead easy games that I really like, and I've played some dead hard games that I really hate. So, I think it is important to have a difference there as well.
Yeah.
So, depends on which way you want. If you're not bothered about difficulty, you can just go on likability. And if you're not bothered about the likability, you just want something nice and easy to blast through, obviously you can look at the difficulty side as well.
Yeah. And we want to make it so, there's some extra stuff to be gained out of that. Like if you want to go and search what the hardest games are, we want to make, some availability for pages for that. Like who would not like to see what the 10 hardest rated games are? Let's have a page for that. Let's have the ability for a person to actually see, like, what am I supposed to be rating here? Because people get confused about difficulty. Is it time consuming? Time consuming doesn't mean difficult. But then again, if it's, overly time consuming, that could play into your ratings. And so we'll get to a point where we'll have kind of a, some directions there for, what a person should look at in terms of difficulty. it's always going to be subjective, but at the same time, we want to try to make the system work. I mean, we already have that in the roadmaps where we expect the guide writer to estimate the difficulty of getting the trophies. So it's only fair to get some better feedback and stuff like that from the community.
Yeah, because one person's easy game is another one's most difficult game, so...
I'll say, as always, we're open to if there's something in particular a person wants to see. I recommended, how good would it be to go to those game pages and see that a trophy is glitched, or to see that the server is no longer open and have it flagged with this game can no longer be, all the trophies can no longer be completed.
So if you happen to be browsing on the Trophies on PSN Amazon store and you're looking to buy a cheap second-hand game, you can also use the website to actually gauge whether or not the servers still work or not.
Absolutely.
One-stop shop, forward thinking.
You know how it is. Important. It's for trophy hunters. There's people out there that pick the hard ones. There's people out there that want the easy cake trophies to add to their numbers. I've been disappointed in that before. I went to buy a game and I, found out that the server was closed, and I was like, oh, you see it. Yeah. We talked about this before. It's discounted at the local GameStop, and you're like, oh, I'm going to get that, and wait a minute.
Well, I've got 6 months to get my SOCOM 4 Platinum, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not worth as much when you can't get the trophies. No. At least to a trophy hunter. So, keep those things in mind. If you have some big brainstorm or there's something you'd like to see, just tell us, because chances are we want to see it too, or we didn't think about it. We want to bring those kind of things to the front end. That's a real key thing is data. Data is the important part of, website success. We want to serve all that stuff up to you. News, data, trophy information, beautiful cards, and a lot of it involves feedback. We need to have feedback on it. We need to have those ideas to begin with. Can't think of everything, as much as we like to think we can.
Conversation isn't a one-way street. Bit of philosophical thinking there. Just make us all look intelligent.
Did you learn that in a video game?
Probably. Although I'm pretty sure it wasn't a GTA video game.
The character.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not that bad. I know a Dutch person that is, though.
On Assassin's Creed for college.
Yeah.
University, whatever you guys call it. Game of the week. What do you got?
I'm just completely a blank what I forgot it was. No, actually.
Title or anything, is it? What's going on? What?
No, I'm getting it confused in my head because I was thinking of the last the last PSN pick of the week that we did, and this is a similar sort of type of game. So I was just trying to remember off the top of my head whether or not we'd done it or not. But yeah, no, I do have a PSN pick of the week. This is something I've been playing for a lot of hours this week. PS3 fans are going to be disappointed again because this is another PS Vita title.
Oh my gosh! Do you ever put that thing down?
No, sadly not. It's titled Total Recoil.
Recoil, not Recall.
No.
No relation to the movie or anything.
No relation to the Arnold Schwarzenegger or Colin what's-his-name movies. No.
Yeah, Colin Farrell or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. I was trying to think of what that douchebag's name was, but yeah.
That remake sucked.
Yeah.
The original was like 10 times better.
Way
Schwarzenegger.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So it's called Total Recall. You can pick it up for about £1.99 on the store. It's only a cheap downloadable PSN title.
Okay.
The concept of it is, from what the developers were saying is, they wanted to give you a kind of fun-filled type Call of Duty experience that wasn't a first-person shooter and wasn't just headshotting people all the time, but still had that core element of shooting and blowing everything up and that sort of thing.
So it's a third-person or top-down, or what's...
It's kind of top-down. You get this little soldier guy. It's a twin-stick shooter. Basically, you shoot barrels for coins, and you also shoot lots of enemies. And the enemies come through in gradual waves as you go through the levels. So the idea is you've got a set of objectives to complete, like challenges for that specific level to help rank up your soldier. But you've also got collectibles in there, like medals and stuff, and then you have to make it through each wave of enemies as well. Certain levels, this can be like 1 or 2 waves. Other levels, you're talking like 9 or 10 waves of enemies.
Now, is it ranking up guns and stuff, or your soldiers' abilities? What are you ranking up?
Well, that's the thing. You've got loads of different things that you can actually rank up. So, as I say, there's an economy system in there. So, when you complete challenges, you get issued stars, and that counts to your overall rank. As you then rank up, you can unlock the ability to buy other weapons. The weapons themselves are actually upgradable via the coins you actually collect in a level. So you can level up your soldier to have better armor, more perks. You can actually customize kill streaks as well. It's got the cool functionality of kill streaks where you press a button to activate it once you've reached so many points within a wave, and then you can use the front touchscreen to actually direct where you want the kill streak to do, and it's got strafing runs, flames, turrets, those kinds of things. But you can
sounds
also
like Call of Duty.
And you can also and the way you upgrade it is, as I say, the more coins you collect in a level, the more money you have to then spend on these.
Okay.
Now, you might be wondering, what's the point of upgrading weapons? Well, actually, the levels are so actually really well thought out because there are certain parts of the level where the collectibles are hidden behind, but you can't get to those collectibles unless you use a certain weapon to break down a barrier. So then that's where the leveling up comes, and then upgrading the weapons. So it's actually really well thought out, and it is a fun little game. It's very addictive. It's got that Call of Duty shooting vibe to it, but not the disappointment that you've just gone 10 deaths for 1 kill. And camping and all that other crap. And it is a fun little arcade type game to play, and it sort of does capture the essence of what made Call of Duty 4's multiplayer originally fun. Because back in COD 4 days, you basically had 3 kill streaks, a few perks, and upgraded your weapons. It was kept very basic. I mean, if you look at Call of Duty game now, it's like it's essential to actually playing the game. So it's captured that essence and that fun and put it into an arcade title, and it's all the better for it. And I really have to take my hats off to the developers, because when I first saw this, I was like, the developers have mentioned Call of Duty a lot as the inspiration. I was like, this is probably going to be really rubbish. But then I took a punt on it. £1.99. You can't really go wrong with that. And as a result, I've spent well over 10 hours on the game. It is just proper fun to chill out with. So I highly recommend that. If you've got a PS Vita, do check out Total Recall.
What's the price?
It's $1.99 in British pounds. I think it's about $2.99 in the US store.
And what kind of time of play and all that do you think it gives you?
Lots, especially with the trophies.
The trophies pretty easy, pretty consistent, and makes sense.
They're fairly easy-ish. You basically acquire them through time. The more you play it, the more you work towards them. But to be honest with you, you'd be too busy shooting things and blowing things up that you won't even really be thinking about, and the trophies will just pop. So I know that you get a gold one for reaching the top rank, and then you can actually prestige again, and then you get a bronze trophy for prestiging a second time. So it is fun little game to play. You will get trophies. The more you play it, the more likely you are going to be able to get those trophies. So it's great fun time killer. For $1.99, you can't really go wrong. And I'm just thinking, I would like to hear feedback from people in regards to the PSN pick of the week, because we do this every time we come on the podcast. The problem for me, though, is when we come to do the PSN pick of the week, it's really hard to choose, because I'm fortunate enough to be able to have access to numerous PlayStation platforms like PlayStation Mobile, PS Vita, PS3, etc. And it makes a decision really hard, because some weeks that there's an excellent game on both the PS3 and there's an excellent game on the PS Vita. So
we originally started with the idea of the PSN pick of the week. So in all fairness, PS Vita, you can buy PSN games, and so I mean it's one of those things. It's opened. It's
but if one's on one platform and not on the other, it's. So I was just going to say, if people want me to actually try and do both platforms, let us know when we post the podcast up.
It doesn't sound like you play the PS3 much at all. You just send your PS3 over to me. I'll use it. I got enough kids. We can use an extra one.
Believe it or not, I have played both quite reasonably a lot of late. So.
All right, if you say so. Well, I mean, the other thing, you could do some articles directly on the, your pick of the week and stuff too, to pull it a little bit,
Yeah.
Since we only have a few listeners out there, apparently.
Everybody loves us.
Yeah.
we just need to spread ourselves out a bit more. As dirty as that sounds, but yeah, you get the gist.
Alrighty. Well, so PSN pick of the week, awesome. Vita.
It's all about the Vita at the moment.
Sorry, how much do you play the Vita compared to the PS3? Give me a percentage breakdown. 70-30?
I'd say it's about
60-40. Really? Okay.
Yeah. I try and balance it out, but to be fairness, I was saying about this the other day. When we were talking about the Twitter competitions and stuff like this, and also the fact that PlayStation Plus. I was actually talking to one of our members in Threads and stuff who was PMing me, asking me about PlayStation Plus, and I have approximately about 70 games for my PS Vita. And what's crazy about this is I haven't gone out, since I've got my PS Vita, I haven't gone out with the intention of buying all these games. A lot of them have come from things like cross-buy promotions, winning stuff, PlayStation Plus, and it's like, I originally started out probably with about 15 games on my Vita, and over the last year, through all those numerous different things, it's just grown to a crazy number that it's hard to find time to play on the Vita, let alone on the PS3. So, I shouldn't complain, obviously, because it's a nice position to be in. But
we could probably use in the forums a PS Vita explained and a PS Plus explained thread that just very clearly lays it out. That people are still confused about that, and how that works and how the Vita works with. Yeah, I mean, you answer a lot of stuff in your thread. We'll point to that too. But how many of us know how to transfer games and how how all the saves work and all that stuff with accounts? And it can be pretty complicated, and it can scare people away because it's like, well, and I firmly believe too, like, just as much as you play it, you're not always on the go. People are probably using their Vita more as another console than they are as like a handheld on the go.
The strange thing is, I do
playing it, and you are.
Yeah, well, see, that's the funny thing, though, because, for example, if you've been playing, say, Call of Duty, for example, for a good couple of hours on a Saturday afternoon or on your day off or whatever, and you think, oh, I'm going to chill out and watch some Netflix or stuff, you can just pick up the Vita and play your Vita while watching stuff on Netflix, I don't buy into this whole men can't multitask. You can watch TV while playing games, so, it's a nice option to have, but, you asked me this before, do I actually take my Vita out on the go, and, certain people will testify they've actually seen me take it out and they go, even when I'm going to meet them for just a chat, I will take my Vita with me. So
everywhere but in the shower, right?
Yeah, pretty much. So, and I think you're right, though. I think we probably need to do some sort of look at the Vita, because we did think about it beforehand of doing like Vita 1 year on article, but we'd already done like 6 months on. So, I'm kind of curious to leave that till a little bit later in the year, because of obviously the PS4's gonna come out, and that may change the way that people see the Vita as well. So maybe round about that time we might do something to sort of review how the Vita's gone and where it's going forward. Not long before that actually occurs, so be something to do.
Well, I put that terminology up when I came across the Vita and I came across PS Plus. I considered actually doing a little bit of some lists of a few points of what it was about, but it's one of those things. I guess we can always add that later if you come up with something and somebody has some brilliant ideas for that. We could always link the terminology to some threads that talk about it if somebody wants to do that.
But in the meantime, if you have picked up a Vita, I don't want to self-promote here, but if you have picked up a Vita, you need help, advice, etc., you want to know how to do things like, upload your save to the cloud, store data on your PS3, etc., by all means, go and visit the PS Vita section of the forum. There is a thread in there, Ask Dante. You can ask me anything PSV related. If I don't know the answer, I will find the answer for you. I will just say that, and other people will help out. But it's a good place to suggest, and if you're having problems or you're new to the PSV, you've just picked one up, do go in there and ask questions, because we will always strive to help you. So,
why don't you start us off on our topic of the day?
Well, we kind of got two to deal with here, I think. We were talking about this before we obviously come on, so we probably should really get the biggest one out of the way, which is really to do with technical specs more than anything else. I mean, you and I, we're a special kind of gamer in some respect. We have been gaming for probably 50 years between us, maybe something along those lines. So
30.
When a console comes out, we're kind of used to seeing the whole technical stuff. We're always interested in the inside outs of it and things, not just the games itself. And part of that is also having an interest in technology as well. Well, earlier this week, I shan't mention the website in question, obviously, for keeping it reasonable. Earlier this week, a reputable website did an in-depth look on the PS4 and the memory side of things. Now, unless you're an actual developer who has a dev kit in your office, you're not going to know what the tech specs are. Really, you're not. So when a website that especially focuses on technical expertise of consoles and frames per second and graphics, and looking at all that kind of really geeky, nerdy stuff, starts breaking things down when they don't even actually have a system or a dev kit in their hands, there's already questions and doubts there. What concerns me slightly with all of this in terms of the technical specifications is that since the fiasco with the Xbox One, it seems that when we talk about the new consoles coming, there's a lot more focus on the technical aspects of each system. With the Xbox Ones, it wasn't just the DRM stuff, it was the fact that, it was using an older memory system, it's got Blu-ray, all these kinds of things, and those became the talking points rather than the actual console's selling points, and it's games, really. And that kind of concerns me a little bit, and, this website sort of put this back into our attention, really, because they've even had Sony had to go and clarify the situation with them without giving away too much industry secrets, that some of the information they'd actually printed in that article was wrong. And I wonder, do gamers actually, do we really, really care about technicals, the technical aspects of it that much? Because surely, what defines us as a gamer, or gamers, is the games we play. And the experience we get from those games. Can you really think people are going to sort of say, well, it's got 8 gig of RAM, but they're only using 5 of it, I'm not going to buy that console? And that's kind of what's, worrying me slightly, that we're making this more of an issue than it really needs to be. And certainly as an aspiring journalist, it's kind of like, I know the summer's slow, but then you put a story like this in a slow time, and it gains a lot of traction because there's nothing else really going on till, well, at least August anytime. And so
I think the typical gamer has just changed throughout time. If you go back, there used to be a time where it was like there was not any mention whatsoever. Like when I can remember buying an Atari and buying Atari games, there wasn't any like memory, there wasn't any of that stuff. It was just you knew what the ad showed the game did, and you just picked and choose that way. It wasn't so much today's world where everyone's more kind of pushed towards technology with phones and computers, and exchanging these kind of things more readily with social media. And so I think that you've got a more technical gamer now that's probably a little bit more, especially from computers, they're a little bit more keen to what RAM is. They're a little more keen to graphics abilities, and certainly PC gamers, or anyone that also PC games, they've got to learn that to navigate. So that's probably where that comes from. You got a lot more people want to know this as a kind of a benchmark in their mind to compare it to Xbox.
But should that be the kind of real, the core decision behind obviously your purchase? Because as you say, looking at some of the older systems, I remember going back and buying a PS2 and getting my first PS2, and I was like, the thing that I was sold on was the games and the graphics. the games look brilliant on the new system. And I wasn't too concerned about the technical aspects of the graphics, just that the graphics looked great for its time. And the only technical aspect, that really made me feel that I'd done right by buying my PS2 was it had DVD. And you have to remember, back in that time, DVD as a format was only really just starting to take off, and become the norm in people's households. So that was the only technical aspect that I really cared about. And even with the PS3, you sort of look at it again. It comes back to the games on PS3 look great. The selling point of it had HD graphics.
And a console is not meant to be sold like, you can get it with extra RAM and all that. That's the whole point of the console. It's all built in. There's no decisions really to make. But still, you have, accessories that are coming now. You've got a lot of stuff with the size of the hard drive. There's just, that's having people ask more questions.
Yeah, but see, when I look at the PS4, I'm looking in terms of, I've said that this time and time again, what Sony are doing with the PS4 with the extra features and good stuff, and PS Plus multiplayer and all those kinds of things are great. But am I realistically going to decide my purchasing decision on that? No, I genuinely don't believe so. I think the excitement around the PS4 is really going to be the games themselves and how great they look, because essentially when you look at a console months before it comes out, when it's launched, the only thing they really show you is the console itself, the controller, and that then becomes all about the games and how great the games looked. But I find that
do you think there's some something to be said about like the fact that people are going to want to compare to Xbox? Do you think that's where this is coming from? Because
see, we saw kind of this whole comparison thing really kick off when the Xbox 360 and PS3, when they both launched, although there was a year between them. Prior to that, we didn't really concentrate too much on the comparisons. When you look at back in the day, the Dreamcast was a fantastic bit of kit. It was extremely early for its technology, and yet it didn't do it any favours at all. But when people were talking about the Dreamcast and the Nintendo GameCube and the PS1/PS2 and all that kinds of things, they were compared by the experiences they gave. Not because they had, not because one had a cell processor, one had a portable like Tamagotchi thing that you stuck in a controller, and then one, had Mario, for example. It was literally all about the games then. And since this generation of games has become more technical, I'm worried, that with Sony and certainly Microsoft's focus on making this whole cloud, always online connectivity, trying to make the experiences more pleasurable, better experiences where we're all connected. I can get on board with that. I can dig that kind of ethos, and I think it's a great way for the new generation to sort of proceed. But we're still taking the old ways with us. Does it matter if a games developer only gets 5 gigs of RAM? Well, because at the end of the day, as they can make the best damn bloody game with those 5 gigs of RAM, it becomes irrelevant.
Well, except until you start thinking about, like, how does it compare to Xbox? Because look at it this way: if Xbox comes out and they've got 8 gigabyte of RAM and they allow for the full use of that, which they won't. They've got 3 operating systems. We really don't know, how that's going to work out. But comparably, if they have a lot less RAM or a lot more RAM, doesn't that mean if you're developing a game that they will not be the same between platforms, that you're either going to dumb them down for both versions, or one's going to be extremely, more enjoyable gameplay than the other? It just seems to me like people are right in the sense to look at it as a comparison, and what you're saying is not really to look at it in terms of like just with PlayStation and wait and see what the games look like. And they both make sense. Both views make sense. But at the same time, we don't have any gameplay or anything yet. So if all we have is those kind of stats, people are going to latch onto that and go, well, there you go, look. You're not getting as many resources as you think.
But I just wonder about the importance of it. And, it comes back to, the original sort of bringing up the topic in the first place, which is, again, it comes back to this the website in question, has said such and such as if it's fact, and it clearly isn't from what Sony's telling us. And there has to have been some thinking there, sort of saying, well, we know people want to do the nerd thing, get involved in a discussion about statistics and comparisons, and even thinking about it even further, you obviously know that that's going to drive traffic there, because even though we haven't seen it over the last couple of years, it's kind of died down a bit. It's like the whole fanboyism. We did that podcast show about like fanboyism. It's like that's starting to creep in, but unlike last time, it's more a case of where websites of a professional capacity are actually trying to drive that as a revenue stream. And that's why I say, at the end of the day, do we actually really care that much about the technical side of it, to the point of where it's going to stop us buying the system? Because at the end of the day, if the games look great, isn't that what we're being sold the system on?
Well, the other thing too is you gotta look at news agencies as a whole. Another topic we've also talked a little bit about.
Yeah.
But, they can have these extraneous stories. It's the same thing with this. Where's their proof? Where's their source? Why is Sony telling them they're full of crap? The other thing is, you and I both know you could put a story up tomorrow and say, well, the PS4 is going to be delayed, and it gains momentum. It could be complete,
BS.
BS, and then you write an article around it. It's going to be delayed for people in, South America that, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
It's a national holiday.
Well, we've spoken about this before with like stories that have gone up on Twitter. You click the link, you go straight to the article, and it just says in the article there's the headline, and then underneath it it's like developing story. That's it. And I just wonder, as gamers, that certain websites or certain professional organisations, are trying to essentially treat us like idiots in some respect, in knowing that we will go and check these things out, and sort of latching onto that a little bit to try and make themselves money, or whatever the reasons are behind it. And I find that's quite frustrating. I don't claim to be a professional news person, even though my role within the site and the capacity in the job that I do, but at the same time, surely I have some moral principles of how we go about fulfilling our roles, our duties, and how we treat our members and so on as gamers and so on. And so a lot of this becomes questionable, And coming back to what you mentioned before, when we were talking about the second thing that we kind of wanted to cover on this thing, we were talking about the issue with Fez 2.
Mm-hmm.
Where an indie developer goes on a popular video podcast, is rightly questioned about some of the goings on with Microsoft's reversal about its indie games policy. Through misunderstanding, it's a case of where the developers got offended, and rather than apologise or try and resolve the differences, the arguments then spread onto the Twitter, and it's now resulted. I don't want to say who's right or wrong here, but it's now resulted in a professional journalist having a heated discussion with a developer, and as a result of that discussion, the developer has canned development on a game.
Mm-hmm.
Who loses out from that? Us as gamers.
Yeah. Yep.
And so, I do wonder with some of the older guard with journalism, for somebody like myself as an aspiring journalist, that kind of saddens me. Not just as a gamer, because I'm never going to get my hands on a copy of Fez 2, regardless of which platform I own, but I also see these kinds of heated debates going on. And, this isn't the first incidence of where journalists have had heated debates with, whether it be their fan communities or developers, etc. And it worries me slightly, because it's like, what am I actually aspiring to be?
Mm-hmm.
And I think as again, it comes back to this, do gamers, with the technical aspects of it, we sort of got into this whole cycle of really wanting to know the stats and stuff, but it's become a very what's the word for it? I'm just trying to think of the best. It's become a path fraught with, fanboyism that we can't help getting sucked into. And so, it's also become really overcomplicated as well. At the end of the day, should it not just be about what it has always been about, the games?
Yep, games.
We all like to read. We all like to read news articles. We all like to get the info, but sometimes we also need to take a step back and think. Are we overthinking this too much? And we've had this discussion. You think back over the podcasts we've done before. When we came to the EA debate, for example, one of the biggest gripes that people had was, I'm not buying EA games because their business practice with online pass and DLC this and DLC that. And, over the course of that discussion, we even, talked about the fact that, DLC being an optional aspect of it. We talked about the fact that we're canning online passes and stuff, and still people sit in that corner, of that I'm not buying it 'cause it has DLC, or I'm not buying it has an online pass. So they never get to experience the game, and because they're truly overcomplicating something that should be simple. If you like the look of the game and the game looks good to you and you really want to play it, why should a small hurdle stop you, or an article suggesting technical information that's wrong stop you actually playing a game?
Mm-hmm.
Why should an argument between a journalist and a developer cause a game to actually be canned? Why does it have to get that complicated?
I can tell you that I think that there's a lot more responsibility on today's journalists, because look at it, and that's another thing. It's greatly changing, the age of social media and people being connected more closely for news that they are directly interested in. It used to be you'd wait for the nightly news to come on, and you didn't have a real source to get the stuff, the breaking news. And now everyone's everywhere with their cell phone camera, and they're tweeting stuff that are happening, and it's too easy to get wrapped up in some of these people that start wielding a lot of power because they're an important blogger or Twitter person, and they just say the one-off thing to get attention, and well, it suddenly becomes true, whether it's true or not.
I mean, from my perspective, if I, for example, ever offended anybody on Twitter, and thinking of myself in a professional capacity, I would still think, the moral obligation to sort of say, well, perhaps maybe I shouldn't have said that, or, or may have overreacted. How hard is it to apologise? And especially, that's even better, because if you're apologising over Twitter, for example, you're apologising to everybody instantly, instead of having to go find that person's email address and send them a pleasant email and so on. So, but what I quite often see is that, these kinds of false articles, or, non-articles, or these heated debates occur, and yet nobody seems to want to take responsibility for it. And it comes back to this, we've had this conversation about social media. We've said before that some of the best ways to think about social media is kind of thinking, treat it as you would treat your normal day. How would you interact with people on your normal day, and then take that into the digital world, and that's how you really should conduct yourself on social media. So if you have a heated debate with somebody, like a work colleague at something in real life, and then you start doing that online, how would you address that in real life? Well, you'd agree to disagree, you'd apologise if you'd said something offensive, and you'd move on. I don't see that happening these days, especially with professional journalism.
I think there's just, if you want to pick your path to be a professional journalist, it has to come with, you have to have that integrity in there. Otherwise, I think, for me, I have a lot of people that I used to listen to in terms of their opinion that, it only takes once for me. I won't go to those sites. One journalist is, you can tell they're clearly, almost bought off with their opinion. It's you have to understand journalism too. If you're a consumer of journalism, you have to understand too. You take your nightly news. They approach somebody and say, "We're going to do an interview with you. These are the topics. Here's a list of the topics we're going to talk about." And they will only ask questions and stuff that are revealed. You don't think David Letterman, comes up with all that stuff on the top of his head. No. He sits down, his writers and everything, they decide what kind of questions they're going to ask. They pass it to their, Tom Cruise's, publicist. And they go through it and they read, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a new movie. Okay, we'll bring some footage to show. We're going to talk about, my kids at one time, blah, blah, blah. It's not surprises. It's not, arguments that occur. Yeah. And, there's something to be said about kind of being in the middle there, being... Yeah.
But surely,
But it's social media and all these other outlets. What do they have? They're happening in real time. They're happening, a
Yeah, but
little
there
bit
should
more
be a
off the cuff.
balance, to it all, and as I say, my concern really is for the user, the consumer of these things getting drawn into stuff that they probably don't really give a crap about at the end of the day, and there's this. It then becomes a case of whether you go and you're sort of making money on false pretenses, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it frustrates the hell out of me that,
Well, let
as I
me ask
say,
you.
nobody seems to be responsible for it. It's kind of like, well,
Let
it's
me ask you
Twitter, so be
this:
it.
where's the happy middle ground? Because what about protecting sources as well? If you did have a source, and again, I'm thinking outside the box because, like, from law enforcement, you can have the same kind of thing with testifying with court, where you can go in and you can say, well, I've got a reliable informant, and they can't testify, but I use that as a basis for my actions, and it's sort of similar in the journalistic world where it's like, I've got a source, I don't want to reveal it, it could cost them their job, and I have a job to protect them. But then if you're basing it on, like, well, they told me that, and so it's reliable because I know who they are, there's somebody that maybe works at Sony and they're telling you that, where do you draw the line with that too?
Well,
Because you've got to protect your sources. That's part of your integrity as a journalist.
yeah.
But then not stir stuff that you know to be
But we've talked about
false
this
or
before, and we've said, some of the ways around it, is to not present the story as fact, because a lot of the time when you actually see a lot of news stories that are kind of, source Mr. X has told us this specification is correct,
uh-huh.
and it's kept at the bottom of the article in smaller in smaller fonts and smaller letters, and the impression you get from the rest of the story is that this is actually a story being presented as fact. And for me, that's where the misleading comes from. And I think, why can't people just, why can't the people writing these, be it journalists, semi-professionals, or amateurs, be very clear about this, and more importantly, just because a source gives you an information, does that mean you then have to make an article that a source has given you information? Could you not say, well, one of our sources, could you not approach, do an article, for example, we approach Sony about and offered them the opportunity to answer all these questions based on what our source has, given us the information for. Sony declined to comment, blah blah blah, and leave it at that. It's a lot of the time you don't even feel like they're actually
That's probably an
reaching
important
out to
piece.
companies to do it.
That's probably an important piece missing from this one, in particular, is they probably didn't go to Sony and said, "Hey, this is what we heard. What do you got to say?"
Yeah, no, Sony had to come to them and
that's
respond to them.
that's always good journalism anyway, to hear both sides of the story.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of people will go to, they'll ask an expert.
But for Sony's perspective, I mean, they obviously had to keep quiet about some aspects of it because, like we know, and I'm sure many of the professional journalists know, that no matter how much Sony puts out press releases about this, that, and the other, especially when it comes to technical specs, some things can change, even 6 months prior to a console's launch.
Mm-hmm.
Look at how many U-turns Microsoft have done in the last couple of months since the pre-E3 conference, and those things can grossly change. And so, I can understand the manufacturers holding back on some stuff, but surely I don't know. Sometimes it feels like there's this animosity between aspiring writers, amateurs, semi-professionals, and professionals, and the games industry itself, where it's them against us kind of thing. And we, as the consuming media people, as readers and followers of Twitter and stuff, and the social media aspect, and the people that want to snap up all these things, it's like we get drawn into stuff that we might not even necessarily care about, and to sort of highlight this, I couldn't care who said what in this whole heated debate between, someone that's a journalist who I've certainly, I don't know personally, but I know from having followed, some aspects of his career and, looked at some of the things that's probably gone a little bit too far on his part, but then I could say the same for the developer, to the point where it's cancel the game. But all I really care about, the fact is that now I can't play Fez 2 because people couldn't agree to disagree. People got drawn into it, and so it's, people have probably sat there with popcorn on Twitter, like GTA Man likes to say when he starts a fight on Twitter, for example. And it's kind of like, the real crime here is that we are not going to play an excellent game. And isn't that what we should really only care about?
It's a difficult thing all around. I mean, I think journalists need to get some integrity, and they need to be cautious in the way that they approach stories. And at the same time, as consumers, we have to look at it and say, well, is this a story worth me giving attention to, or is it bad journalism and I should move on to something else? Because it's too easy to hype stuff nowadays. It's too easy to corrupt it into something. And then, at the other end, does Sony have to devote their time and resources to respond to this kind of stuff? If somebody's not making, picture people doing that all the time, then Sony's got to, we got to stop here and explain this. We got to stop and explain this over here. It's a technical thing, but apparently it's a big deal. Look at the Twitter. Look at this person over here who's got kind of,
do you think,
quote unquote, inside information, and
Do you think some of the other parts of the problem could be that, effectively perhaps maybe some of the way that, especially when it comes to gaming sites and stuff, the way they operate in terms of staffing, and the fact that a lot of the staff that are in positions of public profile are kind of people that were really from the old days, and may not necessarily still be adjusting to things like social media and stuff. And so, do you think there is really a call for a new kind of more open system with, a lot of people coming in as fresh blood? Because obviously, there is the demand for people to read interesting, content-filled articles, but does it need to be done in some of the ways that it's done, as you say, without integrity and so on? Because I don't know. I mean, once you get a game in the job industry, it's so easy to find another job because there's kind of this enclosed circle, and it could be said the same for the gaming press. You may get, ask most developers to get put out for a job because, say, Activision's closed the studio down. Some of them will pursue other careers, others will start independent studios with financial support from others in the industry, and others will go on to work for other companies. You often see it when there's a big announcement about job losses. A lot of other companies will tweet out or say to people, we're hiring, tell them to get in touch with us, and rather than sort of pursuing the new blood, really, which is like, well, you're fresh out of college, you may have some great ideas, let's get you in.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I blame more of the openness of the social media, and there's just a lot of people into the tech market, into commenting, into blogging. It's just, the internet's just busting open with that, and games are becoming such a staple point that they're becoming, they're moving on to being a part of your television system, and all over phones, and Facebook games have just taken off. And I think there's just a lot of people now that are just out there, and they're commenting in their opinion, and they've got strong followers because they have similar topics. And I think it's just too easy.
But you look at the
stir the pot like that.
But you look at the TV but if you look at the TV industry, for example, there'll be TV and movie industry. You've got reviewers, you've got journalists that cover stories on movies and so on like that, and quite often, directors of said movies and TV shows are quite open. They'll do a lot of press interviews and stuff, but there's still that respect between the journalist and the director in terms of the interview and so on like that.
Well, anything, even if
and you don't find the outrage. You don't find the outrage.
This is the thing. Even if it's presented as factual, the sheeples of the world, everybody's too readily to believe something. You read it, it's from it's posted on some well-known source, it must be true. And that's where people come from, that basis. They don't challenge stuff. They don't say, well, okay, that's one person's opinion, or, oh, okay, somebody leaked that, and, well, that's interesting, but, is it true? Or, we don't have what Sony has to say in this. It's people are too readily, willing to just believe something on face value, even something where, it's got factual stuff in it. Yeah. A lot of journalism, let's face it, is, you relaying what you heard from somewhere else. Yeah. And it's, even if you put it in there as a fact, how many of your comments are really truly facts?
Yeah.
Most journalism is largely opinion and what a person heard, which in the rest of the world is called hearsay.
Yeah.
So-and-so said it. They work at Sony. It must be true. That's my source. I don't want to reveal it. I don't have to. It's just like making crap up. Well, I've got to say this and this and this. Somebody prove me wrong. Well, Sony's not out there looking to say, oh, well, yeah, this guy came up with a story and it's complete and utter bullcrap.
Yeah.
And let's go respond to that. No, we're busy making the new PS4. We've got no time for that. And then a frenzy starts up, and people say, well, haven't you responded to this? It must be true, And that person's getting, attention. They're getting spotlight. Just like all those people that title their articles in those terrible ways, grabbing headlines. And it comes back around to people just need to focus on finding a responsible journalist. And if you're a journalist, I think you need to have the integrity to know that you've got to be careful with picking your words. You've got to seek out both sides of the story. You've got to seek out factual stuff where you can say, so-and-so that works here, his title, his name is this, and he said this. That's much more important than my source that I'm not revealing, who's someone important, said this. Yeah. And it looks like this is really going to go bad for Sony and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Because that's just poor journalism, and people that buy into that.
Yeah, but even if you need to keep your source, anonymous, as it were, you can still you still need to make that very clear that you at least attempted to get in touch with the company about what your sources said.
Yeah. Well, how about this? If you had somebody that came out and said, let's say you knew a source, they're from Sony. Mm-hmm. There's 8 gigabytes of RAM, and they say 7 gigabytes are going to be used for playing Blu-ray movies, and you've got it on someone that you respect as a good authority, and they work there. At some point, do you present this as like, well, I've got to conceal your identity, or do you say to him, look, if you're saying this and this is so true and this is not something that, you're coming out with a negative to Sony, and this is just a tech spec kind of thing that you're revealing, why can't I use your name?
Yeah.
That's the other end of it is like, well, so I don't know.
Because for the most part, half of it would be common knowledge anyway from some of the press releases that Sony put out. So,
right.
I mean, we all know that the PS4 has 8 gig of RAM.
And developers are surely gonna, find out pretty quick, and they're giving out dev kits and stuff, and people are, doing their thing, and what happens with that? I mean, developers would be another source. Like, hey, you got a dev kit. Does this seem to be true? You just got to research stuff enough to where you can understand your story is not corrupted by negative, or someone's made up bullcrap, or it all comes back around to being a thorough, responsible journalist with integrity.
Yeah. And certainly, from my perspective, I certainly like to think we kind of do that in some respect, or at least strive to anyway. And in areas that we don't.
Serve as a warning to people to pick and choose. Don't be like jumping on the rumor band mill.
And let's have respect for each other as well, because
works until it comes out and you see it.
Yeah, have respect for people, each other as well, whether you're a journalist, a developer, or you're a commentator as well, because this is worth pointing out. It floats both ways, because we've highlighted obviously the article that I've mentioned. We've talked about the argument between a well-known journalist and a developer and stuff. Even though we haven't given names bar the game, so I'm pretty certain people can figure that out. But look at it from the other side of it, which is the fans and us as commentators getting too riled up by stuff. I mean, the community manager for Call of Duty Black Ops 2 this week has received such disgusting treatment over social media, and I don't want to alienate people here, but if you've been one of those people responsible for abusing somebody over Twitter because they changed the power of a gun, you really, really need to relook at your priorities, because threatening people's families and over Twitter, etc., is not acceptable, regardless of whether you agree, disagree, etc., with information that's passed on to you. And as I say, when you look at all three assets, three aspects of it: a row between a developer and a publisher, a developer and a journalist. You look at an article that's done on assumption but presented as fact, and you look at the abuse from commenters, the general gaming public. and the way they treat developers and community managers, etc., in certain occasions because of certain information, we all need to come back to this, being respectful. If we're asking journalists to have, come back to the drawing board and have some integrity, then at least we can do is try and at least be respectful as well. You can always put your opinion across in a well-valid way. You don't ever need to resort to the, you've changed this, I'm going to kill your family, because that's just absurd. And I really want people to think about that, because there's times where I've got frustrated with things over Twitter, and I've vented that rage over Twitter, but I've done it in such a respectful way that
Well,
I'm mindful
the
of those
internet
things.
always brings out some of the best in some people,
Yeah. Well, if you're gonna
They
do
hide
it, at
behind
least
that
do
computer and they get all
it.
brave.
If you're gonna do something
Nasty.
like that, at least make a valid case and point for your argument, and the thing that's riling you up. Because at the end of the day, journalist or not journalist, developer or not developer, commentator or not commentator, we're all people. You know, um, you wouldn't go out on the street and start abusing people for no reason. So why would you do that on Twitter, Facebook, or anything like that? And see, this comes back to the point I was making at the beginning, which is, when did it all get so complicated? Can we not just get back to what it is that we all
It's
love
too
and do? Is
complicated now.
just
It's going to remain
games.
that. It's going to get even more complicated. I
Yeah.
call it now. But
We use
that's
that as an
social
anchor
media
point.
growing. That's the news growing and it being more at people's fingertips.
Yeah.
As we get closer and closer, you're going to see more and more segments of society kind of developing where people
Well, I was just going to say,
grouped by their interests.
as an anchor point, if you find yourself getting frustrated by all these kinds of things, don't necessarily respond to them. Do what you love most, which is go play a relaxing game.
Yeah.
Surely that's got to be better for you mentally and physically than it is to get on a keyboard and rant at people. And if we're asking people to do, like professionals, to take stock of their situation, have some moral integrity, and and all that kinds of things, then the last thing we need to be doing is going on social media channels, etc., and abusing people and so on like that. So, if you find yourself ever getting raged up and so on, do the right thing. And even if you're playing an online multiplayer like Black Ops, for example, don't go on there and racially abuse people because you're frustrated. Be productive. Go and stick Journey on for an hour or something. Chillax, because we all buy the systems for games. Games are what's important. It's our common point between developers, journalists, and the average Joe. So at least try and use that as an anchor point for your frustration, because it will help you. I promise you. I know that from experience, honestly.
Don't reach social media posts or anything. Is that the the message?
But it's not just social media. I mean, even if you disagree to a very strong feeling with somebody's integrity, in a professional, semi-professional, amateur capacity, be it a journalist, a developer, a publisher, because you and I know that you don't. There's no love lost between you and Activision. Just don't buy into it too much. If you do find yourself getting into the complicated world of it all, just step back. Make it uncomplicated. I know it's easier said than done, but just try.
Well, I'll give it a shot. I won't tell you there's not times that I wanted to reach through Mike and punch some guy on the other side.
I think we've all been there, but
or the other thing, Activision, they basically told me they were going to do all these things to help some issues, and they never did.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things, I guess, feedback and find the sources where feedback's accepted, and it's you keep a cool head, and the person at the other end is going to improve and do the best they can. And certainly, with news, you want to have somebody that's respectful and has the right mindset for the kind of news that you want to hear. And then if you do all those kind of things, you can better your experience. You just ultimately have to stop and think of what you're there for, I think, is the big thing. And if it's not fun anymore and you're so raged up, that's where I end up. Like, I'll put down Black Ops 2 and put it down for 6 months because it did take me off. And I realized, well, I'm not having any fun with it. I'll throw that bad boy in a corner. I'll play something else, and I won't go back to it for a while until I forget about how much it upset me. It's just to each his own. You got to develop our own little ways of handling things.
Because while gaming may be part of the
we
problem,
ask for feedback. We clearly don't want Don't be raging.
Yeah, give us something
Give your honest
constructive.
opinion of news. Give your honest opinion of what you want to see.
I'll always have more respect for a well-balanced argument than a mayor that was crap.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, tell me why it was crap. I don't mind you telling me it's crap. Just don't get on there and be, it's mother effing crap.
Yeah.
Why it's mother effing, so I can change it. Give me a chance.
Yeah.
Make it better. Somebody should tell that Journalistic needs to dig a little deeper.
Well, as I say, it is a rare occasion with that particular individual, and I hope that they can at least resolve their differences and stuff, because at the moment, regardless of who's right and wrong, it doesn't shed a positive light on either party. So, and that's something we don't want we don't want the whole industry, regardless of who you are within it, being tarnished with that brush. So.
Well, I mean, let's tell people still to use social media. Give your feedback. Don't be afraid. Anything else?
No. Just other than to say, well, this week you're going to see a revamp with some news. I'm not going to say much in terms of staffing, etc. But expect a lot more content this week, and in the weeks going forward as we really ramp it up.
And welcome, other people to write articles. Write some yourself. Remember, we are accepting those. For review, for articles to go to the front page. We also, the staff, shout out to them for, they have the ability to kind of write the site news and whatnot. It doesn't really need so much of a review, as it's more of an announcement type post. Yeah. You're welcome to kind of do that kind of stuff and put it in there. And I will say it can be simple, all the way up to, people want to start writing reviews and whatnot. Those are welcome as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had quite a few inquiries about reviews this week. So, if there's any questions people want in terms of how to write a review or the submission process, etc., we do have threads that explain the submission process. But, by all means, do PM me. I'm more than happy to deal with anybody's queries about whether or not they, they can write reviews and so on.
Dante Zero, tweet him,
PM tweet,
Facebook him, show up at his house, whatever it takes.
Yeah, but if you're going to show up at my house, at least bring cookies and coffee.
Bring a game for the Vita.
Bring a game. It's not like I haven't got enough, is it? But no, I was also going to just add to that. I was just going to say we are still progressing nicely with the news team recruitment. If there is anybody out there that knows somebody that wants to, right, do get them to...
Somebody that has a cousin that works near someone in a store that has friends with a neighbor that...
Or if you're already an existing member and it's sort of something you thought about but never really thought about doing, we are still recruiting members for the team. So do PM me, again, email me at social@TrophiesonPSN.com to find out how you can do that, and we'll explain how the process works. And you could very well be joining us on one of the podcasts later down the road, or even doing your own sort of thing within the news team. So, do apply.
All right, we're running long. So with that, we'll say thank you for joining us, and we will see you on future podcasts. Enjoy your day. Have a great week.